Good. Okay, but let's make a start. So yeah, welcome to this MarketingKind xChange event. It's great to have everybody with us. The subject of today's discussion is what makes cause marketing partnerships work for both sides. So we're going to be looking into the subject of where charities, causes come together with corporate partners, and how both parties within those relationships can maximize the value of that relationship for the good of both organizations. And we've got some brilliant panelists to help us talk about that today, all of whom have a number of really good perspectives on this subject, and I'll introduce them in just a moment, and then we'll get into it. But before we do that, it's great to have so many of you with us today. Many of you on the call are MarketingKind members already. Some of you are not, but perhaps would like to become so, and we'd love if you were to join our community. But maybe just to tell you a little bit about what MarketingKind is, what we do, and how we work. We are a membership community. We're a membership community of marketeers who've really come together to try to create something good in the world. It's a membership society where the whole reason for being is not what can I get from the society, but what many of us in many different ways have been involved in individual acts of giving, donating our time or money or something else to causes or to charities over the years. MarketingKind is a vehicle for us to come together and to bring those individual acts of giving into a collective act of giving, and hopefully in the process really help some incredible causes, but also to connect with one another, to do great things that perhaps we couldn't do on our own, and also hopefully to develop ourselves a little bit in the process as well. And we do that through a whole series of different types of events. We have xChange events such as this one, which are quite large gatherings with sort of hundreds of people on occasion, where we really try to tackle a particular topic. We have today both marketeers who are involved in corporate organizations, but we also have a number of representatives from charities and causes as well, both of whom hopefully are going to be able to learn something from what we talk about today. We're also, as we always do in these events, we have a few causes who are going to introduce themselves. We want every one of our events to be an opportunity for causes to introduce themselves to potential partners and potential people who might be able to support them from the marketing community, and we're going to give 4 causes a chance to do that later on today. We have other types of events as well. Coffee with a Cause is a slightly more informal, a smaller event. They typically happen on the last Friday of every month, and it's a chance to really try and help a particular charity within your coffee break and to engage in a particular topic where a charity needs some support. And it's a really nice informal way of coming together with some peers from the marketing industry and with a potential charity partner, and to really think about how you might be able to support them. And then we also have monthly sessions called Your MarketingKind, which is a chance for members just to get together very informally, to meet one another and to get to talk about some of the things that they're up to and share inspiration with one another. We've got a whole series of events booked for 2021. This is our 3rd xChange that we're running today. We have another xChange event coming up in January on the 13th, where Sue Unerman and her co-authors from the book Belonging are going to be talking about the subject of who belongs in 2021. Which sounds rather intriguing. We have a digital fireside chat with Lynn Franks, OBE, coming up on the 21st of January. And in March, very well-known Seth Godin is going to be giving us an xChange event all around the subject of how all marketing, or all good marketing, I should say, can be marketing for good. So that's going to be a really inspiring event. I'm absolutely sure of it. Today, though, we're talking about partnerships between causes, charities, and between corporate organizations. And I am delighted to have Emma and Lisa and Lawrence with me, all of whom have at least 2 or 3 perspectives each on this topic. They have all experienced cause marketing partnerships from a number of different angles, both within corporations, within causes, and indeed working in support of causes as well. So they've got some brilliant viewpoints to share, which is really good. I'm going to start the discussion by just, I'll invite them one by one just to introduce themselves in a little bit more detail, and then to say a few words on the subject of cause marketing partnerships, and then we're going to kick off from there. I've already had a few questions sent in, which is excellent, from participants in the discussion today. So we'll be coming to some of those, but you can at any time write new questions in the Q&A panel. So please do that. Keep your questions coming in as the event goes along, and we'll try and answer some of those as well as we go through. So yeah, let's kick off. So perhaps I'll ask Emma to go first. Emma's the Joint Head of Corporate Partnerships at Mind, but she has a number of other really interesting experiences in her background also around the subject of cause marketing partnerships. So Emma, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Steve, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So yes, I'm currently Joint Head of Corporate Partnerships at the mental health charity Mind. Been there for a couple of years now. But I've been in the charity sector for about 5 years. So I've also worked in corporate partnerships at NSPCC and at a small startup called My Kind of Future, working in the education sector. But as Steve has said, I've got more perspectives than just charity and corporate partnerships. It's also from the corporate perspective. So for about 15 years, I worked across a number of different marketing and media agencies, always on sort of partnerships, but very much from a client management perspective. So have that perspective to bring today in terms of what the corporate's looking for, as well as the charity and the cause themselves. Great,
thanks Emma. Turn to Lisa. Lisa also has some experience of working from a number of different points of view. Lisa is presently the founder of Good Endeavours, which I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about, but also has some great experience on the corporate side as well. So Lisa, why don't you make your introduction?
Great, thanks Steve. Yes, so I am an independent consultant. I work with businesses and not-for-profits on helping them to plan their corporate responsibility strategy, helping them to deliver social impact and to measure that and to communicate that. And it just so happens that a lot of my work this year has actually been with a number of charities, helping them with their partnerships proposition, helping them to engage with businesses and corporates to attract new partners. I was previously in the corporate world. I was at O2 as their head of partnerships and social impact, and prior to that I was the director of global corporate responsibility at Intercontinental Hotels Group. So I've got some interesting perspectives on why some of those bigger, larger corporates engaged in partnerships with charity partners, and why they did that, and sort of what goes on in some of that decision making to select their partners and to make those really successful partnerships. Yeah.
Great, we're definitely going to come back to that, I'm sure. So thanks Lisa. Lawrence also has got some great experience working with some small and large charities from his career, and is presently, I get your title right, the Global Commercial and Marketing Director of Travel Experiences at Collinson. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that, Lawrence, and tell us a bit about some of the things you've been doing on cause partnerships.
I'm definitely going to have to defer to Lisa and Emma because I don't have their breadth of experience on both sides of the house. But lots of corporate experience, both at Nectar, at Samsung, and Steve, as you said, at Collinson Group. And put together quite a few partnerships in that time in the charitable space. Emma and I actually collaborated with Paul and Anna on Pimp My Cause, which we'll come to, and really passionate about a win-win of getting some brand love. I'm very open about the fact that we can use charitable partnerships to help the brand, and in my case that's Priority Pass, but also doing so for good, and that's what we'll come on to.
Yeah, and tell us about the partnership that you're engaged in right now.
So we have a 3-year relationship with Save the Children, and that was put in place earlier this year, and trying to put in place a tripartite relationship with 2 clients, and it's related to our business in as much as for every one of our members that goes into an airport lounge, which is our business, for a month, and we're just finalising the timings of that, each of us will put in £1. So a really nice way to link activity and have some very big businesses. It's a bank and a payment network. They are much bigger than us and have much deeper pockets than we do. And I was very keen to tap into that, and delighted that our business is also willing to fund that because we're a family-run organisation.
And that's great. And yeah, you're making the point there that partnerships don't just have to be one-to-one. It could be indeed a one-to-many partnership, actually.
Absolutely, and we will try and expand that beyond just these three if we can. And often I find if you can get something off the ground and make it run successfully once, you can then replicate that and expand it. So hopefully this time next year we'll be having multiple partners also contributing the pound. And again, that's how you start growing this out and really making an impact for the charity in question.
Yeah. And in that case, is it yourself that's been trying to curate the different partners, or has the charity been engaged in that? How have you gone about sort of building up that coalition?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting one, because one of the challenges I've had with this is there isn't a natural fit between what we do and the charity that's been chosen. The charity has been chosen by the family. It's a family-run business, and they're passionate about this cause. And in particular, we do quite a bit of work in China, and there's a real need with migration across the continent in supporting children as they're displaced. But there isn't that natural fit. Thankfully, one of my clients already worked with Save the Children. So it was a case of finding that client, anchoring with them, and then finding another partner that was willing to come on the ride, essentially. And off you go from there. But ideally, you would normally find something that's a bit more aligned, and that's what we've typically done in the past.
Yeah, it's actually a really good point that you make about how corporations choose the charities they work with, and sort of how affiliated, what sort of alignment they have to the cause. I know that's something that all of you have some different perspectives on. So maybe Emma, you wouldn't mind just to chat a little bit about that, sort of to what level is alignment really required between what the cause is doing and what the corporation is engaged in?
Absolutely, it's a really good point, a really good question. And I think what we're seeing recently, I mean, especially in this very strange year, is a real importance in alignment of values and alignment of mission for both the charitable cause and the corporation, because that's where you get real amazing solutions created together. Some examples in this year, like Land Rover partnered with British Red Cross to help them with deliveries, things like that. A real fantastic alignment, both in terms of values, but also their actual business and the mission of the charity. Whereas a few years ago, corporate partnerships with charities were much more what we'd call traditional employee fundraising. So employees looking to do challenge events or to do some volunteering to support a cause. And that's where you'd often have staff votes, and that's where the individual perspective, like Laurence was saying about the family-run business, where people feel a passion for a specific cause for whatever reason, personal or otherwise, will look to support that cause for a specific period of time. So there's two different angles to it.
Yeah. How about Lisa? Have you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally echo what Emma's just said there about having the alignment, and I think you're seeing that trend more and more, actually. And perhaps the best way I can bring that to life is through a couple of case studies from partnerships that I was, lucky enough to lead in my corporate life. And if you take the example of O2, for instance, we had a partnership with the NSPCC charity. Now, O2 is one of the leading telecoms brands in the UK. They are delivering positive good by getting connectivity to people who need it and who want it. But there is a risk associated with that, of course, online harms, cyberbullying, etc. So it makes perfect sense from a business perspective for them to align with a charity such as the NSPCC and to support their work in helping to keep families safe online. Likewise at IHG, where I was previously, we had a partnership with Care International to support emergency disaster relief. Now, you might think, well, why is that important to hotels? But actually, in many countries, in many locations, when there's a natural disaster, when there's a hurricane, when there's wildfires, when there's an earthquake, quite often it's the hotel that is the only building that is left standing, and they're a beacon for people in the community whose houses might have been destroyed or damaged. Hotels have towels, they have food, they have bedding, they have equipment and staff and rooms, and so it made perfect sense, again, in a strategic way, to partner with an organisation like Care International to be able to get help to people who need it and to use the skills of both partners for good.
So yeah, in both of those cases, there was a real alignment and affiliation in terms of how to add value to the beneficiaries of the charity, not just in terms of a financial donation.
Totally, yeah. But on to Lawrence's point that he made earlier about being part of a family-led organisation and the founders of that organisation supporting a particular charity. I mean, that's a really interesting perspective as well, you know, because it is so helpful to have the CEO or a senior person on the executive team to be sponsoring, to be promoting, to be championing the cause. It's really important to have that to help drive internal engagement within the organisation.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Absolutely. I might come back to that one in a minute, actually. But I am a little bit intrigued by something you said, Laurence. Of course, what you've been doing by building up those partnerships, of course, is bringing more money, more donation into the partnership. But of course, cause partnerships are not always about the money, right? They could be about something else as well, some sort of value in kind exchange, and maybe even more important in that case than just the sort of sheer financial support. So I'd like to just chat a bit about that. You know, what goes wrong maybe in a cause if or in a partnership, I should say, if it all becomes about the money or all becomes about something else.
Yeah, it absolutely shouldn't just be about that. One of the things that's been very successful for our business is we have a CSR channel within Workplace, which is essentially Facebook for business. And we're encouraging people to use their days annual leave for charitable partnerships. That's something that the company's gifted us. And typically that is for Save the Children, but also any kind of fundraising activity is match funded. So one of my team members grew a huge beard for lockdown. We persuaded him to dye it purple and have it shaved off later. And all of that was match funded. So you can generate that sense of community. But also we've then taken it beyond, as I said, using your day, your days sort of in lieu, if you like, for supporting that charity. They've been out and about and helping in various ways. We're not yet at the stage of bringing our expertise to bear with the organisation, but it is a larger charity, and you know it's very well run. So there's probably a little bit less we'd be able to do there, but certainly going beyond. I guess a lot of what I've described is still fundraising, but it's in a slightly different way. It's trying to support them, through some of their other activities.
Yeah. Maybe Emma or Lisa, some more thoughts?
Yes, yeah, I was hoping to add to that. It's a great example. What I love about that is the employee engagement piece. I mean, a great thing about cause-related marketing is not just the marketing to customers to get them to donate or to engage, but also to work with employees. And that's where a very Mind-specific example, is Mind work on both individual well-being, but also workplace well-being and the importance of looking after your mental health. And that's where all of our corporate partnerships, we're always looking for an opportunity to tap into that audience. So much more than money, but to find a way to support employees and staff at our corporate partners with their well-being in the workplace. So it's the same principles of marketing, really, to think about the audiences that we have access to, whether that's customers, whether that's clients, like Laurence's example with Collinson's clients there, or whether that's our colleagues, so the employees and staff at those corporate partners. And by knowing those audiences and what their motivations and objectives are in terms of being involved, you can use the same principles as marketing to tap into a much more beneficial partnership that is definitely much more than just the finance, just the income.
Yeah. Lisa?
Yeah, I think the finance model that you discussed there was the traditional way, right, of partnering, and you'd have a CEO would write a check at the beginning of the year, and you know, hey presto, Charities gifted some money, often in restricted funds, which is, you know, Emma will know way more about that than I do, but that causes some problems as well. But I think what Emma and Laurence both been talking about is look at the other opportunities. They are beyond pure financial donations, and you know, particularly now, you know, 2020 in the year of COVID. I mean, my goodness, what businesses actually have access to huge funds that they're just going to be there with a checkbook, ready to you know, to write off, you know, a check for, you know, however many thousands of pounds. It's tough out there, right? It's tough for charities, but it's tough for the businesses as well. So how can both sides come together in a creative and an innovative way to use the assets, the skills, the people that they both have, you know? So is that access to technology? Is it access to marketing opportunities? Is it access to space, office space? You know, and you know, what is it that can be done outside the traditional writing of a check? I think that's a hugely interesting area.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that, Lisa. And one of the things I didn't mention is we've got a strong social channel, lots of followers on there, and quite a few times this year we promoted Save through that. There's no direct calls to call to action there. It's purely sort of publicity and trying to generate that awareness.
We've been touching a bit on employee engagement here, employee engagement within the corporate partner. But what about employee engagement in the charities themselves? How does that happen in these partnerships? Do you find that employees get engaged in that way too?
Very interesting question there, Steve. It depends on which employees you're talking about. So if I'm brutally honest, in my last sort of 5 years in the charity sector, corporate partnerships weren't always the most welcome. It was always, it's actually sometimes seen as a difficult balance to strike in terms of a charity with a very sort of strict and clear sort of mission and aims. To see their brand associated with a commercial brand can sometimes be difficult for some of the employees who joined for very altruistic reasons, who joined the cause to not have to work in the corporate sector or to work for a brand. So employee engagement can vary, but again, it's about making sure to demonstrate the value of that partnership to the cause, whether that's to the beneficiaries, if it's a case of raising awareness through social channels or through their retail outlets, or O2 and SPCC is a fantastic example where demonstrating how important that partnership is, not just the money it takes to make sure the charitable activities continue to happen day in, day out, but also reaching the end audience of those children and their parents to help them stay safe online. As long as you continue to emphasize that and remember to always talk about that benefit, the employees will come along with you. And I have to say, it helps sometimes. So an example I've got is PG Tips. We're a sponsor for Time to Talk today. A lovely fit in terms of have a cup of tea, time to talk, whatever you're feeling at that point. And some free tea bags really helped. It really helped make that partnership feel a little bit more beneficial to some of the employees of the charity.
I mean, it's such a good point you make. Of course, employees in the charity may not necessarily see the benefit of that partnership in quite the same way as the leaders of the charity. Really good perspective.
Yes, I think. Sorry, I was going to say, Steve, the marketing element of it's particularly relevant there, and that's for this particular discussion, because the more public you are with that partnership, i.e. where you've got two logos side by side, an example being McVitie's partnered with Mind last year and had Mind's logo and lots of packets of biscuits. It can sometimes feel to some of the employees who work on the harder hitting edge of what their charity does, it's like, devaluing of the charity, on a pack of biscuits, or what did we do this year on some shower gel with Radox, for example. But again, it comes back to trying to find that alignment of purpose. It's about, why are those two brands together? And it has to be authentic. And I think that's something for some of the charities that might be online on this webinar, is to really not be scared to say no, to really find that alignment in why you're partnering and what your message is. Yeah.
I presume sometimes there might even be partnerships that stretch to the borders of ethicality as well, or at least perceived ethicality, for a very pure cause, perhaps working with a partner that sort of feels it strays a bit close to the edge. I can imagine that's a dilemma for causes as well.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about partnerships, and you all have given some brilliant examples. Often they're of larger causes and larger corporations, but what about small charities? I'm sure a lot of the participants on our call today are from smaller charities. How can a smaller charity benefit from these partnerships in the same way that a larger cause might? Who'd like to jump in on that one? Lisa, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I don't deny that most of my experience here has been with the larger corporates and also larger charities as well, to be fair. But I think some of the principles that we're talking about still apply, and it's about this meeting of the minds and how together you can do more than you can as individuals. And how do you align strategically? Emma's talked about it, Laurence has talked about it. What is it that you're actually trying to achieve? What is your charity's purpose? What is the organization's purpose that you want to partner with? And are they genuinely fitting together, so that you can use your skills, your assets, whatever it is, to achieve common good. But I'd also add to that, there's something about culture and values, and ultimately for a partnership to succeed, you've got to get on with each other, right? You've got to like these people, and it's not you don't want a them and us situation. You want this is one team, right? This is one team. Okay, the paychecks might come from different people, but it's one team ultimately, and you talk about it as one team, not the corporate or the funder, and not the charity. It's one team. So big or small, I would encourage any charity or any business looking to find a partner to really consider how you get on culturally, and is that also a good fit, as well as the just strategic alignment.
I think that's a great point. The other piece I'd make there is aligning on expectations at the start and constantly checking in around that. Is no different to any other business partnership in my experience. Get that alignment up front, agree the ways of working, spend as much time as you can together up front, because that helps with those the bonding, if you like, and making sure there is that cultural fit, and then keep checking in and having the honest conversations, because otherwise you start to drift apart and you don't get the results you want.
That's a very good point. Emma,
absolutely.
What were you going to say?
One point, yes, sorry, thank you, was so my last role before Mind, which albeit it's very it's quite a large charity in England and Wales, was at a startup of 30 people. So My Kind of Future, social enterprise, looking to support young people from diverse backgrounds into apprenticeships and graduate opportunities. And that's where it absolutely was tough in a team of basically 3 to try and go out there and sell the charitable mission and services. And I think Lawrence's point around managing expectations was key, but also to really see how, as a small startup, small charity, you actually have a lot more going for you than you realise. So both Mind and NSPCC, and I'm sure my employers won't mind me saying this, we're quite big beasts in terms of process, the number of stakeholders you have to get sign off and engagement from, the number of meetings you have to have, whereas a small startup, you are so agile, you're able to do so much more as a small charity. And a corporate, no matter what scale, will really value your ability to be able to pivot, to support them, to work with them on whatever they're looking to do in terms of their cause-related marketing. So I think it's using your unique abilities there, and always making sure to talk about the impact you have as a charity, because that's all they ultimately should care about.
It's coming back to something Lisa mentioned earlier about innovation. You're right, and you mentioned, Lawrence, that charities you're working with, large organisations, there's not so much necessarily you can teach them about running business. They're quite capable themselves. But smaller charities, as well as benefiting from the value in kind, might also be more innovative. If a large corporation is looking for a bit of innovation, inspiration, a small charity could be exactly the place to get that. Large charities can behave like corporates themselves in some regards. So perhaps a smaller charity is a better way to stimulate your own innovation thinking within your own business. Yeah, that's great. Richard, one of the charity leaders who's going to join us a bit later, he's made a point in the chat, which is also really good, that in his case, sometimes alignment can be found quite easily around geography. Just picking a charity in the local area, that gives some degree of common ground, and it could be something as simple as that, that brings you together in the first place, doing something for your own local community that you happen to share. The thing about small charities, I guess, is if they're in partnership with a larger organisation, how can they sort of enter into that without being overwhelmed by a large organisation? How can they feel somehow equal in that partnership? Any thoughts from the panelists on that?
Yeah, I think corporates run the risk of overwhelming all charities, actually, but particularly smaller ones. And I've learned this the hard way, I guess. But often, if you're the business, you have a lot of stakeholders to needs to meet. So you have, as a CR director managing a partnership, I would have to report back to marketing, corporate comms, finance, operations, you name it, reporting to all these senior stakeholders within the organisation about the value of the partnership and what is that delivering. And that often creates a bit of a hamster wheel of, you know, asking for reports, asking for updates, give us the quarterly report, let's have the quarterly meeting, the annual review, etc., etc., etc. Now that can be quite challenging for even a large charity who might have dedicated staff just to manage all these client requests, but for a smaller charity that could really be, you know, getting them to work with one arm tied behind their back, really, because what you've got to be really conscious to not do is to add a lot of administrative work and a lot of process and procedure, because ultimately what you're doing then is stopping them doing the important work that you're trying to help them do in the first place. Yeah. So I think that's an important lesson for businesses to think how they give their grants, what advice, what support can they do to actually help the process run smoothly and more efficiently.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I'm actually a trustee on the board of a small charity, and even boards of trustees can kind of impose a bit too much governance sometimes on the charity, let alone the corporate partners. So I think it's such a good point that you make, Lisa. How do you ensure that the people in the charity day to day can actually help the beneficiaries more than just be reporting? Any other thoughts on that one? How we avoid large corporations overwhelming charities, small or big?
I think it comes back to that expectation setting up front. You know, what do you need from me? If you're a small charity, what do you need from me? This is the question to the large organisation. How much reporting do you need? How many updates? Just getting that alignment up front and pushing back if you don't feel you can do it, because ultimately it should be a beneficiary to the charity in question, and rather than swamping them on things that aren't going to add value, ultimately, not to the charity at least.
But those are great questions for a charity to ask a potential corporate partnership at the outset before even entering into the partnership, perhaps.
Yeah, I think those questions, here's what I can do for you, do they resonate? What can you do for me? Do they resonate? You know, it's just going through all of those objectives, being really clear on it, and keep checking in.
Yeah. Emma?
Just to add, the Pimp My Cause activity that Laurence and I worked on together, it was with 5 very small charities, local to us at the time. And that's where the expectation management, as Laurence has already said, was key, but also the focus. So really trying to hone in on a central question or a central area that both parties were going to work on together really helped map out, keep those expectations in line and prevent sort of project or scope creep, which often is what overwhelms us when our corporate partners get a little bit pushy, or things move into a realm you weren't expecting. It's usually scope creep, if I'm honest. So it's really good to have that focus of what it is you're trying to achieve and keep checking back on that. That's a good way to try and prevent that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Yeah. There's actually a question, or a couple of questions in the Q&A regarding finding the critical decision makers in large corporations, especially. If you're a small charity, you know, how do you engage in the right way with the people who can make the decisions? Any advice that you guys can give, particularly the smaller charities? How do you find those people? How do you engage with those people?
Well, in my experience, there's always been a number of decision makers involved. So you know, you might assume that it's somebody within CR or it's somebody within marketing, but actually you've probably got a whole matrix of people that need to get on board with any decision making. And it's those functions that I mentioned earlier: marketing, corporate comms, finance. I've always, if I'm championing a particular cause or looking to give a grant to a particular charity, I've effectively had to write a business case to all those different stakeholders as to why I think it's a good thing to do. Now that includes, you know, the obvious, like the social impact that we hope to deliver together, but it also includes, you know, budget outline, a breakdown of costings. It also, very importantly, I think for the marketing team, needs to talk about, you know, reputational advantage, and what this is doing for the brand, how this aligns, how supporting a particular cause or charity will support the brand narrative and what you're saying about your brand, and how therefore it helps from a marketing proposition perspective as well. So actually sorry, I'm not sure if that's answering the question, because often I find it's not one individual that you go to, it's many people that you need to influence.
And that can mean for a smaller charity especially, it might feel like a very long process, and sometimes you might wonder, why haven't they answered? Why haven't they given us a response? And in fact, there could just be more people who need to be involved. Emma, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, from my experience, it's really, really important to find advocates and ambassadors. So that's where, I mean, we're all so connected these days, the joys of LinkedIn, social media, etc. It's once you have your hit list of corporates that you want to approach, so looking at the question, how it's phrased, in terms of critical decision maker, find people who already work there or who are connected, who can tell you that, who can help you and make that warm introduction for you. From all my sales training in the corporate world, I brought it with me to the charity sector. And honestly, it's one of the best things, because if it's a staff boat that you're going to enter, having those advocates and ambassadors will really help. They'll promote your cause for you. If you're looking for an introduction and you know, investigating who is that decision maker, getting that warm introduction is crucial, rather than a random anonymous email address on a website. So really, really do your research online and find your connections. You will have some, believe me.
Great.
I'd add to that on the multiple stakeholders, and even in our business, as I've said a couple of times, it's a family-run business. That means there's a father and two sons they've had to convince, plus CSR, plus marketing. And I don't doubt that took a long while to do. So I would say, don't be disheartened, keep plugging away. The other thing is, we've talked a lot about that relationship as though it's you've got the relationship in place and then it's done. But actually, certainly in our case, we've got an overarching group relationship with Save the Children. But it's then about that stakeholder mapping to see, well, what activity can I get within the business? And that's where, you know, I'm hoping the relationship I'm going to get off the ground will actually double our investment, not investment, the funds that we raise over and above the initial investment that we've made. So I think it's really important just to keep that lens of who else in the business might I be able to help, and might they be able to help me, because it's not just a one-time hit, it's an ongoing partnership. And as Emma said, I think we've both got that sort of slightly sales mentality, which you need to really keep thinking about other stakeholders within a business and expanding out the business that you do with them, because they will be viewing this as a business. You know, what can it do for my brand? I'm not ashamed to say that's partly why I'm doing it. What can it do for my brand? And it's great that Save the Children had a variety of ideas, and we can sort of match those, and as I said, hopefully build on that success going forward.
So you as in any commercial relationship, you almost need account managers on both sides, and I know that's very tricky for a small charity to think about, but you need somebody who manages the relationship day to day and can extend the opportunity, from what you're saying, Laurence. Yeah.
That's right, and as Emma said, an advocate, because they will be able to point you in the right direction. So if you're looking at the organisation you're working with and you've got an idea, you can take that to your advocate and say, who would I go and talk to about this within the organisation? Can you set a meeting up for me, etc.
Great idea. Lisa, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, just to think, if you're a charity looking to engage with, you know, not struggling to see how to engage with a potential partner, you know, it's all about connecting with hearts and minds, really. And is there a way that you can bring your cause to life for those individuals, so they're not just listening to the story of your mission in a boardroom somewhere? So one example, when I was at IHG, we set up a corporate foundation, and we made a grant to the Passage, which is a homelessness charity in London. And it was all very well me talking to the executive team about the Passage, and you know, I'm sure that got me halfway there on this journey. But what really made the difference was getting them into the kitchen at the Passage to actually serve meals to the homeless, because then you're actually seeing it happen live, and you're witnessing the people that you're trying to help and support, and you're getting that direct feedback. And if there's ways of that you can do that, you know, different organizations will do it in different ways, but if you can somehow find a way of capturing hearts and minds of these stakeholders, that really does help.
Bring the cause to life and bring the reality for the beneficiaries of the cause to life for the potential partner. I think that's such a good point. You've all of you talked a lot about relationships and advocacy and finding the right people in the corporate partner. You, Laurence, also talked about, in your case, the charity was selected from a sort of family, from a very personal perspective. But also, of course, what can happen in corporations is advocates leave, they move on, they change jobs, something happens, the corporation gets bought or sold. Any ideas you guys have about how can charities navigate those crucial moments, those kind of transitions when things maybe don't go as well as you might have hoped?
I think we talked about having multiple advocates or multiple stakeholders, and actually that's one advantage of having multiple stakeholders in a big corporate. If one leaves, you can still lean on the others. I would say having your sort of pitch ready at any point, and any successes you've had in the past, be ready to demonstrate those to the new person coming in. I think it is really key as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and a live example I'd talk about is English Football League partnered with Mind, and that was a real, we had a real driving force with their former CEO who left, and a new CEO came in, it feels like years ago, but only earlier this year, pre-COVID. And I think a key part of that, as Laurence said, was having our pitch ready, so to speak, no pun intended, and also having those multiple stakeholders. It wasn't just advocates, it was entrenched relationships. I like to talk about the spider web. We were in each local club delivering physical activity, therapy, delivering services, which meant that the relationship was already so entrenched, it was difficult, for, even if they wanted to uncouple quickly. So it gave us time to build that relationship with the new senior stakeholder.
It becomes something a company just does. It's not something you review when you come in. It's just, right, fine, I'm picking this up, this is what the company does, and just keep going with it.
So the more you can weave the charity partnership into the fabric of the corporate partner, the more likely it is to stay embedded, even if some of the executives change.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great point. Really good. There's a few more questions coming in, but please do share your questions. I can imagine there's some charities out there who are thinking, it's a pretty daunting task of going into partnership, but also maybe some of you on the call tonight are marketeers who are wondering about actually entering into a partnership, and maybe you're also thinking about how to get the most out of that. Donna's asked a question which is really good. Can you share good and bad examples of the ways in which businesses attempt to measure the value of partnerships with charities? And I like the way Donna put attempt to measure rather than measure, because often it is an attempt and it's quite difficult. But how about that? Good and bad examples of corporations looking at the value of the partnership.
That's a really interesting question, Donna, because I remember a couple of years ago, in a corporate foundation meeting, and we were talking about the grants that we'd made, and we were trying to measure the value of them. And I asked the question, we were asked, what is the impact of this? And when I asked each individual around the table, every single one had a different definition of impact. So it's a little bit like, how long is a piece of string? We've got what is the definition of value? What is the definition of impact? I think that you've got to be clear up front about how, be honest and transparent about what it is you're going to measure and how often you're going to measure, because it takes me back to the point that I made earlier that we were I would say we did overwhelm some of the people we were trying to help. We probably hindered as much as we helped, and you don't want this to just be a PR stunt where you're photo of you giving one of those massive oversized checks to said partner. It's got to be more than that, right? It's got to be meaningful. And if you're giving a check, but with that comes huge administrative burden because of the reporting and the frequency of the reporting, then that to me is a bad example of how to manage the relationship.
You've actually diminished the value that you were trying to create. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, my good examples all come back to, just like Lisa said, the purpose of that grant or that donation or fundraising. You've got to think about the audience that you're going after. So if it's traditional Charity of the Year partnership and the audience is employees, And the good ways of measuring that is employee engagement, how they felt before the partnership started, how they felt after, you know, classic pre and post. Things like turnover. I've had corporate partners measure how their staff churn, so how many staff felt engaged and wanted to come into work pre versus post the charity partnership, how many of them volunteered, etc. So quite sort of standard metrics there, but actually all of those metrics the corporate had to measure. So the onus wasn't on the charity to measure, the onus was, you know, to try and engage them with the cause, with fundraising, with activities. And on the flip side, there's customer facing partnerships, so marketing partnerships, and those have very classic marketing metrics such as reach, sales, etc. Again, as much as you make sure to align those metrics and the definition, as Lisa said, of value up front, the easier it is to measure it throughout. And my advice for any charities listening is make sure that the corporate's the one measuring as much as possible. Yeah. They're going to believe it more than if you say this partnership led to a 3,000% increase in whatever, which, you know, is really difficult to prove sometimes, but also the onus isn't on you to measure it. All you should be reporting on is the impact on your beneficiaries. That's why you exist. That's why our charities do what they do. So that's what we should be reporting back on.
Great point. Don't be sort of overwhelmed by the burden of measurement as well as the burden of delivering to the beneficiaries. Yeah. Laurence?
From my perspective, I completely agree with getting the corporate to measure. So I could measure the success of our relationship through social media likes and, you know, that sort of brand strength. Honestly, I don't care, and that's the sign of a good relationship, and that we're not really in it for quite that level of benefit to us, you know, the cold hard benefit. We know we'll get some brand love and some engagement from it, but the absolute metrics don't matter too much, which I think is really compelling. Also on the softer side, just the relationships we're able to strengthen with our clients is really powerful too. So don't always focus on the metrics, because they are hard and they can be challenged, you know, if you're getting down into that level of detail. But if you've got a stronger relationship with a client through the charity, that's a win. You know, that's a very clear win, and it's very easy and tangible to talk about.
Yeah, and hopefully also corporations will think about beneficiary impact as well. Is the partnership also leading to the cause having more impact, not just the impact within the corporation itself? That
yeah.
Not directly benefit the corporation, but nevertheless it would be a great outcome, of course, if the partnership has helped the beneficiaries to benefit after all. Great. We've touched on this a bit, but I'll ask the question again. Kay asked the question: is it possible for very small causes with very limited resources to have access to such partnerships? Can very small charities somehow find partnerships? Yeah. Emma?
Yes, I absolutely think they can, and I actually think this links to one of the questions in the chat from Joe Davidson as well, in terms of the pitfalls and the benefits for small charities. And I think it's really important to not try and compete on the same level. Don't try and offer the same level of account management, employee engagement, or fundraising. As a small charity, be really clear on what your mission is, and really, I hate to use this word, but really sell that and engage the corporate with that. And that USP is actually going to be greater than what some of the larger charities are able to do. And again, the access comes back to finding personal connections, finding advocates, ambassadors, finding people that you're connected to. That will help you get through more than the anonymous form on a website or anonymous sort of CSR at whoever, Tesco, you know, because unfortunately the larger charities have an advantage there in terms of awareness. So for small charities, I'd really recommend you can get access to it by finding individuals to tap into.
So the quicker you can make a personal relationship, the better.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just to add to that point as well, perhaps if you are a small charity, maybe just find one or two partners that you can align with, to, you know, again, to overcome this burden of admin. And, you know, if your resource is limited, can you find one, maybe, or one or two that you would work with in a very strategic way, rather than, you know, half a dozen, 10 different organisations, because that's just 10 different sets of reports, or it's 10 different meetings that you've got to have. It's more adding more of a burden onto you.
Alison's asked a similar question, but I like it. It's on the other side of the coin. What should small charities not do when approaching businesses? What are the things you can, what are the pitfalls you can fall into, or the traps? Any thoughts on that one?
Over-promising. So don't be tempted to say yes to everything that the shiny corporate's asking for. Believe me, even the big charities do that wrong. We've done that wrong in sort of current role and previous ones, where you've been so keen to partner with a particular corporate or business that you said yes to too many things. So really think through what you're saying yes to, and don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah. No, great point. Any other thoughts? What should small charities not do?
Well, I mean, you tend to get approached a lot if you're in a big corporate, and I think once you're public with one or two partnership, it tends to open the floodgates. So, you know, actually consider whether they really are the right partner. Don't assume there is this magic money tree that, you know, they have access to all of these funds. It's often not the case, partly because of that matrix organisation and the stakeholders that we talked about. It's not that easy for somebody who, you know, in a big multinational to just write a check. So actually, maybe you're better off targeting more smaller, medium-sized businesses. Maybe they are more flexible and more able to react and partner with you in a way that actually works better for you.
I think that's such a good point, Lisa. Partnerships where you're sort of somehow of equal weight, not necessarily the same size, but you sort of bring equal weight into the partnership, and you probably find more similarity in the way you operate rather than very large working with very small. Great point. Gareth asked a similar-ish question. Do national corporates tend to have local partnerships as well as national ones? So would you find a large corporation working down sort of with a particularly local charity? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it varies depending on the corporate, and I have to say, I mean, this is obviously all pre-COVID. It also depends on where those where the national corporate offices are based, because most of them will want some sort of volunteering opportunities, and I have to say quite a lot of charities struggle with that in terms of volunteering that's directly with beneficiaries. There's always, you know, retail shops and things like that, but local partnerships are sometimes much easier to find volunteering opportunities with. So yes, national corporates will sometimes have one large national charity partnership and then some smaller local ones aligned to their local offices usually.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, quite often aligned to a local site. So I grew up down in Kent, and we had Pfizer. It was huge. It was like a town. And when they pulled out of Sandwich, there was a material impact in the local charities because they did so much work with them, both in terms of volunteering. It was a huge workforce there, but also the donations they were making through that. So I think anywhere with a large site. And it kind of talks to another point around, you don't always necessarily need to go to the centre and the mothership, if you like. You can look at divisions, you can look at teams within a company. It doesn't have to be those central resources you could tap into. If you're a smaller organisation, that might mean a smaller relationship, but it's a good starting point. And you may have more success getting funds because there are individual pockets of money that won't always come from that central pot.
Great point, and perhaps with slightly less rigorous sign-offs required to access those funds as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Really good point. I'm trying to capture as many of the questions as I can. I've got questions coming at me left, right, and centre here, so I apologise if I miss anything that anybody raises. But let me just...
Two questions I can link up if that helps, Steve. So
yeah,
Ben's
go for it, Emma.
and Monica both asked questions that they look different, but I can link up. So Ben's asked about mind-specific brand partnerships, and Monica's asked about measurement, and I love her Gillette example there. The thing I just quickly caveat to Ben's question is, whilst I'm talking about the brand partnerships, because this is a marketing specific forum, the majority of our partnerships and the majority of income is still through the hidden partnerships, the employee engagement, the Allianz, the Deloitte in the background that you'll never see, you know, on social media or the press. But I'm talking about the big shiny ones because that's marketing specific. But that alignment is really, really important for brand partnerships. So with McVitie's, it was about having a biscuit with your cup of tea, around make sure to talk about how you feel. So that's mental health specific. With Radox, it was during lockdown, it was about taking time for yourself in the shower. the English Football League, it was very specific. It was linked to physical activity benefiting mental health. So the importance of physical health and mental health, and each local club having access to Get Set to Go, which is a local mind service around physical activity, which links to Monica's questions around the metrics being important around the cause and the corporation being held accountable. With all three of those, we made sure to say, well, do those corporations live and breathe mental health and mental well-being? You know, are they doing as they say? Are they accountable? Are they authentic? And that's why it is really a come back to that. Any public facing or customer facing or brand marketing partnership, cause related partnership, that alignment is so key, and metrics are a really good way to make sure of that.
But I think what the implication of what you're saying is, don't be afraid to walk away from a potential partnership if you feel
absolutely
not an alignment.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
absolutely. And there's been a number that we've had to walk away from, where whether it's public press or whether it's through some digging, you realize that mental health and well-being in the workplace or customer well-being isn't at the forefront, no matter how much a brand might protest it is, and we've had to walk away from those conversations. So it's really important to do that. And the Gillette example I really like to say, you know, I'd hope that any charity partnering with them would think that.
Yeah, no, and it's I mean, it can be hard as a small charity when you're faced with some potential funding. To turn that down is tough, but I think it's such a good point. It's unlikely to be a fruitful partnership in the long run if you feel you're compromised even when you go into it from the very beginning.
Yeah,
really good point.
Yeah, and you have to ask those lines right at the beginning, right, when you're putting together your proposition and what it is that, you know, what you're looking for in a partnership. Like, what are the lines that you will not cross? Yeah. And be very clear about those right at the offset.
Exactly. So it's not a question anybody's asked, but it occurs to me as we talk about this, what about when partnerships end? Because partnerships do end, right? I mean, sometimes a business might, you know, have a charity of a year or charity of a couple of years, and that comes to an end, or there could be other reasons. Maybe even the charity themselves decides to come to the conclusion of a partnership. What's the best way to manage that? How to manage the breakup?
It feels brutal, doesn't it? But it doesn't have to be. You know, consider what is the legacy that you're both looking to achieve, and talk about that at the beginning, right? You can talk about that in your initial meetings. There's nothing to stop you saying, right, we are looking to sign a 1 year, a 5 year, whatever it is, partnership agreement, and you know, and talk about how it ends, talk about, you know, how you scale it up, and then how you prepare for legacy at the end.
And it's almost a project plan for me. If it's a small relationship, it's a smaller project, but you know, let's think about the comms, let's agree those mutually, anything else that needs to be thought through, and just align on that, and keep managing that. And then I think that legacy point I really like. What are you going to build on? How are you going to take that to your next organisation to say, this is why it worked so well, this is why we came to an end. Hopefully there's a logical reason or natural reason as to why it came to an end, and this is what I've learned and how I can build on that for you.
Yeah. I think one last thing I'd add to that, and I can't remember, Laurence, if it was you that trained me in this, but the mantra I've had in my corporate world drilled into me is start with the end in mind with any client relationship. So it's the same for a charity partnership. And just like Lisa said, at the beginning, that very first meeting, it's, you know, what does good look like? What is our final meeting going to look like? What are we all hoping that we'll achieve? It's always just start with the end in mind. Nothing lasts forever. So why not be open and upfront about that?
Yeah. But legacy, I think, you know, perhaps it's an overused word sometimes, but it is such an important thing, right? If you're in a corporation and you're entering into a partnership, think about what legacy you want to leave behind in terms of benefit for beneficiaries, and likewise in the charity. How do you want to come out of that relationship? What will be better at the end of it than it was at the start of it, and that you can then carry forward? Really good point. I'm just going to see if there's maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll actually introduce some of our charity partners with us today as well. Let me just quickly look. Andrew had one earlier that I saw that was quite interesting. Where did that go? Yeah, globally we're seeing a move of profit being replaced with purpose with the new economics of doing good and the Great Reset. Andrew's talking about corporations that are becoming more purpose-led. Do you think this means decision makers are increasingly brand managers And if so, how relevant is it to link your charity to the brand's vision and purpose in an initial approach? You talked earlier, Lisa, about often it would have been CSR managers in the past that were perhaps responsible for a partnership rather than the marketeers. But do we see a change? Are marketeers getting more involved in cause partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about legacy perhaps being an overused word. Perhaps the other one that you throw in the mix there is purpose. We've all used the word purpose an awful lot this year, haven't we? It's an interesting question. I mean, in my experience, the decision can be made by CR, it can be made by marketing. Quite often what you find is that marketing has more budget than CR. CR people never have any budget, sadly. We never have the budget. But regardless of who is the final decision maker, it has to be both CR and marketing will be involved in the final decision. And you have to, so therefore you have to, the rationale for entering into a partnership has to be about the impact that you're trying to deliver and what it's going to do to the brand. You have to be able to prove both points to get the partnership approved.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
So to Andrew's question, yes, it's very relevant to link your charity to the brand's vision and purpose, and not just the brand's vision, but as Lisa was just saying there, the company's overarching vision. Look at what they say on their careers and jobs pages in terms of employees. Look at what they say about their values, their mission, their purpose as well, and try and weave that into every conversation you're having, every pitch, etc. Because I think what's a bit overused now, but it's the 3 Ps they talk about, the 3 Ps bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit. That's what we talk a lot about in terms of what all companies are trying to have an impact on.
Yeah, I think that research piece is a really good point, and then translate that into what's in it for me, because quite often that's all the person on the other side of the table really cares about, what's in it for me, and being able to translate what they think and what they stand for, those company values, and into a personal motivation in particular, is the way to go. Yeah.
Great. No, this is excellent, guys. Really good. Thank you for all your really excellent contributions today. I hope, whether you're participating today from a charity or whether you're participating from a corporation, hopefully you've learned something today that you might be able to apply in the relationships that you're in already, or that you're about to embark upon, or maybe you're just considering entering into a cause partnership and thinking about whether that could be beneficial for the company that you work for. But hopefully you've all taken something away from that. I'll invite the speakers back shortly for some final words at the end of the event. But what I'd like to do now is just turn to our to our charity partners, I should say. As I mentioned at the beginning, MarketingKind is an organization that is all about giving back. It's all about bringing marketeers together and others in order to be able to directly support and benefit charities and causes in any way we can. And today we're very lucky to be joined by 4 causes, and we have the leaders of those causes with us. Each one of them, I'm just going to invite for a couple of minutes to say something about their cause, but also to tell us something about what they might be looking for in a partnership. And if you should happen to be inspired by any of the people that you hear, I'm sure you will be, but if you're that inspired that you'd very much like to perhaps get involved, then please contact Anna at MarketingKind, and Anna will connect you directly to each of, or any one of the cause leaders that you might like to be associated with. So please take the chance to be inspired, but also perhaps think about if there's a way that your corporation might be able or willing to help, or even you as an individual might be willing or able to help the causes that you hear from. So with that, thanks to the panelists for now, and I will be back to you later on. And then I'm going to ask Richard, who is the founder of TheGivingMachine, if you wouldn't mind to pop up your camera, Richard, and say a few words about your charity and what you might be looking for in a partnership.
Well, thank you very much for the intro there, Steve, and hello and good evening to everyone. That was really interesting. I was frantically writing down lots of notes. So TheGivingMachine is a registered charity. We're kind of unusual because we work with thousands of retailer companies. We also work with thousands of good causes all over the UK and thousands of individuals. And we provide a sort of giving platforms and services to connect them all together. And we find that the reason that we do this really, and what really motivates us, is that the one thing that makes people happier generally speaking, and you see on all the services, is the opportunity and the action to help other people and to make a difference. And so really that's the kind of business we're in, to make it easier, to reduce those barriers. And we do that because we have free to give services, as well as some that go above that. So in terms of what we do, well, we work with lots of retailers in a marketing side of things already. We turn shopping into giving, and we have free to use platforms for giving lottery and some giving vouchers and stuff like that. And typically the causes we work with tend to be the smaller to medium ones. So we connect deep into community. And that, so it was interesting hearing some of the things we were talking about, corporate partnerships, because when you get down to some of the smaller causes in community, perhaps tapping into local community businesses really makes sense, because there's a geographical connection. It's because some of the staff that you have may actually also have connections, whether it's to local hospices, food banks, whatever it is. And I think that's kind of really the space we operate in. In terms of what would be interesting, well, it's great the things that we do, but I think what we could bring to larger brands is that deep connectivity. We operate in every county in the UK, and we work with about 8,500 causes all over the UK, and we manage the incoming payments and distribution piece to that. So it's the opportunity to connect deeply and locally. And I think for some larger companies, I think having a corporate partner you work with, like a corporate charity, I think is very important. But I think also enabling your staff and your potential customers to divert and support things that actually matter to them in their local communities on the ground, where £20 can make a massive difference there and then, is also relevant. And I think that's the business we operate in and would like to do more of.
Great. No, thanks, Richard. They're all about diversity, right? Sort of a portfolio of different types of partnerships. Really good. Thank you, Richard. I'd like to invite then Joe. Joe's the Director of Development at the National Youth Arts Trust. Hopefully Joe's here with us. Is Joe here? Maybe not, actually. I don't see Joe's name. So maybe we'll come back to Joe in a while if she doesn't appear. Oh, there she is. Joe, are you with us? Let's give her 1 second.
There we are.
Oh, here we are. Hi, Joe. So,
hi.
Please,
sorry, no, I'm afraid I've got a very ropey internet connection.
Oh,
anyway,
no problem.
Lovely to meet you all, and it's been really inspiring, I have to say. The National Youth Arts Trust was set up in 2013 by Fiona Laird, who is a theatre director and writer. And Fiona was basically concerned about young, disadvantaged, talented individuals who were unable to access the performing arts because of social and economic deprivation. So she did this wonderful thing, and even though it's a young charity and we have 2 full-time employees, we run projects, theatre projects in Hull. We've done one in Ely. We have a bursary scheme which is national, and anybody can apply, and this is for young people. They can apply direct to us for funding of up to £1,000 to help with everything from auditions to classes, lessons, equipment, everything, to ensure that they have access to the arts. So, you know, now, I think particularly this year, when everything's been driven online, now more than ever, I think the arts are so important because, I mean, for well-being, as well as having these sort of cultural hubs and collaborative communities where people work together. So this is what we're all about. And we're about to start a project at Grenfell with another charity. We're partnering with another charity to do a musical theatre project running next year as soon as things start opening up again, because that community is so fractured still. There are issues around well-being, around BAME, all sorts of things. So we want to have a foothold in our local community. We're based in London. So this is what we're all about. But I think where we struggle is that, you know, we are so focused on actually keeping everything going, keeping the show on the road, that we actually don't have an awful lot of time or resources to think about partnerships. Although we have some excellent partnerships with Lambda, with RADA, we've worked with Instagram, but at the same time, we have not really had time to focus on how we can collaborate with corporates and have more giving in kind, and have relationships with people who have a real passion and interest in the arts. So we'd welcome any help, any advice. And I think a lot of the points that have been made today, I mean, there are so many, I've got so many pieces of paper here. I'm going to have to kind of write it all down afterwards. But I think this thing about aligning strategically and also not promising more than you can deliver, those are very interesting and important points. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. That's great to hear from you. And I'm sure we have some people on the call who are inspired by the arts and might very well like to get involved. So super. But now I'd like to invite Jaki. Jaki is the founder of aDoddle. So Jaki, why don't you tell us a little bit about your charity and what you're up to?
Hi, right, okay, so aDoddle is a community mapping platform, and where do I start? Just across the whole of the UK, there are over 150,000 charities, community groups and organisations, and even more community groups and organisations. Sorry, I can't see if my camera's come on, so I really apologise, which is throwing me a bit. But there's nowhere that brings all of this information together in one place so that people can actually find and access the help and support that's around, the places to volunteer, places to connect with others. And if you think back at the beginning of lockdown, just over 4,000 temporary directories were set up across the country because there is nowhere that brings all of this information together. So we were already working on a platform, aDoddle, and at the beginning of lockdown, we decided that we would take the next stage, and we're now launching area-based community maps. So right at the beginning of lockdown, we launched our fourth one in conjunction with Bournemouth University, a partnership with them and their students. And now we've got 47 today. So we literally rebuilt the whole back end of the technology that we did. And our goal is to actually create a platform and area-based connected community maps so that anybody, no matter whether they're struggling in crisis, and there is going to be a long shadow from COVID that is going to affect so many people without being able to find the help and support that they need, or even the opportunities to volunteer or those opportunities to connect. I mean, isolation, suicide figures are going up, mental health is, I mean, I'm sure that Emma would agree, you know, with Mind, the concerns of the knock-on. So we're looking to start some really interesting conversations with potential partners. And that can take many different forms. So we've got a sponsor of a business in Bournemouth, and they're a firm of solicitors, and they wanted to be involved because they get approached by so many organisations and they have to say no to so many organisations and charities. But now, instead of it being a hard no, they can say a soft no and say, we're sorry we can't this time, but actually we're partnering with the community map. Put your profile on there, it's totally free. Share the story. So our research showed people wanted to know 5 key things: who they help, how they help, the difference they make, the help they need, and how to get in contact with them. Share those things, and maybe you'll get that support from other people in the community, but also those who need you will be able to find you. So it's beneficial for everybody. And then another organisation we've partnered with is a mental health one. They knew they couldn't reach everybody, so by partnering with us with the maps, it helps them to help the people that they need to reach find other organisations that can help them. And then another one to do with volunteering. They want their staff to use their days for volunteering, but to find local organisations. That helps to raise the profile of the business in that area. So there are so many different ways that partnerships could work, and we don't know them all. I'm not very good at asking because I'm a giver. So we'd love to be approached by organisations, whether they're charities, whether they're corporates, whether they're smaller local businesses and discover ways that we could partner that are beneficial to everybody. Yeah, so.
Great, Jackie. Thank you very much. It sounds like it's aDoddle, but
Thank
I'm sure
you,
it's very hard work.
Yeah, no, it is. Just to quickly say where the name came from, Noel Edmonds actually approached us, and so I had a couple of meetings with him, and he said, I think it'd be better to be called aDoddle. So I learned how to do trademarks, got the trademark, and then renamed it.
Oh, brilliant. Well done. No, but great. And I think it's interesting, both yourself and Richard, you are charities that are actually helping to connect other charities. And small charities, especially, they are in an ecosystem. It is a network. It is about small charities also helping one another and finding charity partnerships as well as corporate partnerships. So really, yeah, great job and well done. Thank you.
No, definitely. In fact, I just sent Jackie a note that I think we need to have a Zoom coffee.
I think we do.
Yeah, there you go. So partnerships being made literally live as we speak. It's fabulous. Thank you. And that then leads me to Maria. So Maria is the founder of the Centre for Peaceful Solutions. So Maria, why don't you say something about yourself and your charity?
Thank you. Yeah, what a really wonderful webinar this has been, and really hearing from some very experienced people. But thank you for inviting me to talk about what I do. So I set up a charity called the Centre for Peaceful Solutions in 2006. We registered as a charity, and that really came about because I moved into an area of London, and not long afterwards a 7-year-old girl was fatally shot by a drug dealer round the corner from where I live. And confronted with a grieving community and believing that I had some skills in dialogue, in peacemaking, in conflict resolution, I literally just took to the streets and started asking people what needs to happen here. And over the last, I've been doing this for about 20 years. So over that time, it's grown and grown and grown. And I work in families, workplaces, young people. Basically wherever people gather, there is going to be conflict. No matter how well-intentioned people start out, if you don't build in proper conflict resolution systems and proper systems for fairness and justice and all of those things, fracturing happens, and then arguments escalate and so on and so forth. But our flagship project for the last 4 years has been in Dartmoor Prison. And I wanted to find a prison that would understand that, yes, we can come in and we can work with prisoners and rehabilitate them, which we've proved over and over and over again. But I wanted to find a prison that would actually change its system and its regime to accommodate this work. And so the question was, if you have a big community, and in Dartmoor there's 650 prisoners, why wouldn't you turn over the safety of that community to the majority? And that's a really interesting question. And so what we've ended up with 4 years later, and just before COVID hit, is 25 prisoners trained as dialogue roadmap facilitators. So the communications tool I developed is called the Dialogue Roadmap, who literally help struggling prisoners through one-to-one sessions, mediating conflicts on the wings, and more importantly, running dialogues in circles to attend to the kinds of issues that, if left unattended, can manifest in behaviour, violent behaviour. We managed to make Dartmoor one of the safest jails in the prison estate. Our guys were reaching about 120 prisoners a week. So what I love to do, and that's an example of what I love to do, is go into communities and share the skills. So I'm not at the forefront of what's going on. I'm literally supporting the people that are going to do this work. And so what's happened is, of course, when you do things for long enough and you do them over and over again well enough, people get to hear about it. Prince Charles even turned up at Dartmoor Prison to have a look, and somehow or other I got an MBE, which is really extraordinary. But
you know, now I'm being called to serve in many places. I mean, I even have a Native American tribe in Maine who are asking me to come over next year, which is, I mean, amazing. You know, I never thought, you know, anything like this would happen. And so I kind of have two things in mind. Well, in terms of what I've got to offer, is there isn't a business or a workplace that can't benefit from these skills. And so I've given workshops in all sorts of, in legal firms, some of the international consultancies, and some of the smaller businesses that we work with. So I give talks, I can do training and consultancy work. And I'm looking at two things. Our cause is particularly difficult to get funding for, because what we do is it's so not obvious. So we made ourselves self-sustainable. And what we do is we have a small chain of 3 charity shops, which bring in a significant amount of funding for us. I mean, and obviously then some people give us donations, but we have no grants. We gave up applying for government grants a long time ago. And we don't want to be reliant on that either, because it's like a lottery. And so I'm looking for two things really at that very kind of charity shop level. I'm looking for partners who can donate high quality goods to us that will make such a huge difference that we can sell. And so that, I think, is a really easy ask actually for the right partner who could see the value in that. But then at a bigger end of the scale, I need to get this training online. And so I'm really looking for help to do a GoFundMe campaign, or to the help to get the message out, to raise the money, to build the profile, to get that training online. Because, you know, I'm 60 now and I've got some people coming up the ranks, but actually I want to leave a legacy, and to put this training online for free as our charitable give around the world, I think will have a huge impact in families, communities, workplaces, anywhere that people gather. So that's really my ask. Thank you.
No, thank you, Maria, and thank you for your sort of impassioned plea, and for all the things you've achieved as well. I mean, it sounds absolutely amazing. So well done to you, and well done to all of the charity leaders who've joined us today.
I was just going to say, I'd be very interested in talking to you, Maria, because we ran a pilot project at Medway last year for young offenders. We did a drama project, and we've all been talking about how, you know, we don't have much experience around that area, and that project for various reasons had to stop, and we're planning on restarting it. So it would be great to be in touch with you.
Oh, do, yeah, please. I'd love to, you know, share whatever I've got to share with you.
Oh, fabulous. So there we go, 2 partnerships in one day.
Thank you.
That's already a good hit rate. I'm really happy for that, and great that we've been able to make some connections today as well. There's also a couple of comments that people are sending LinkedIn requests to some of you, so look at your LinkedIn afterwards.
Oh, all right, yes, can't wait. Someone better be writing to me, or I'll be really upset.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Even if it's just hello, I'm writing to you, so you're not upset.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And then also, as Anna points out, all the information about all of the charities is in the community space in MarketingKind. So if you have a look at the chat function in the Zoom call here, you can find the links to that. And thanks again to all of the charities who've joined today. That's amazing. And then maybe if I could just ask our panelists to rejoin. We're just about to wrap up at the end of the evening, but I really wanted to just thank everybody that's participated today. We've talked a lot about relationships, and we've talked a lot about how you find one another. We've talked a lot about doing things that you feel passionate about, and we've heard from some really passionate charity leaders tonight. But also, if you're in a corporation that's thinking about partnering, then enter into partnerships for things you feel passionate about and that align to the values and the mission of your own organization. That's how you're going to be able to tap into the kind of passion you heard. And but the thing that really occurs to me tonight is diversity. And we've heard about it's important to have a diversity in how you find advocates within your charity partners and within your corporate partners. We've talked about having diversity of partnership, and again, you've even seen tonight and this call just some very different experiences and very different people who are coming from very different places, but they've been able to find some connections between them, and that's exactly what MarketingKind is about as well, is sort of bringing people together from a diverse range of backgrounds and places to find common connections. So really appreciate everybody's involvement, those of you who've participated and asked questions and listened in, but especially to the charity leaders, and really especially to Lisa and to Emma and to Laurence for sharing your experiences with us tonight. It's been absolutely fascinating and really compelling. We do have a couple more events coming up within the first few weeks of the new year, as I mentioned, and please, what I would really ask is if there's anyone here on the call tonight who isn't a member of MarketingKind but is inspired by what they've heard tonight, then why not think about actually joining the organisation and becoming a part of this community, a community that really wants to make collective acts of giving rather than just individual acts of giving. And if you go to marketingkind.org, you can read all about the community that we're building. I'm all about R numbers these days, and I want my R number to go up. So I work on the basis that if each member of MarketingKind could bring in 2 more members of MarketingKind, then we'd be building this community in a fabulous way. So unlike other R numbers, which we really want to go down, I want the R number to go up for MarketingKind. So if you're inspired tonight, then why not join, or why not encourage somebody else to join? And we'll keep growing this community together. So with that, I'll sign off, and thanks once again to all of you that have participated. Thanks to all the charity leaders, to all the panelists, and please stay safe and have a very good evening and a very happy Christmas. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
A huge thank you. Thank you so much.
Jackie, that's fascinating. aDoddle looks amazing. I'm about to message you on LinkedIn. That's really, really interesting. Would love to catch up properly.
Fantastic. I'd definitely love to catch up with you.
Yeah, I
brilliant.
think, yeah, it's national, but there's so many local minds. You might, anyway, we'll take it offline.
We've got a few on there, but I'd love to connect. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
and I wanted to say, a huge thank you as well to Anna as well. And it's been fascinating. Yeah. Truly grateful. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.